What is up, metal and heavy music fans? It's time for Trench Talk, and I am your host, Flight of Icarus. As always, you can listen to this podcast on all of your favorite platforms, but regardless, also consider subscribing to the YouTube channel for more daily reviews and other content. This week, we're going to be talking about the best grindcore bands and albums out there, but first, I want to introduce my special guest today to help me through this topic, which is Alex of Grind of the Dead. They have a new album coming out called Formless Death, and let me play a little sample of that right here. So, Alex, I'm really glad that we could finally do this, and maybe we could start with you just sharing some of like your favorite grindcore bands and albums that inspired you to do Grind of the Dead to begin with.
Sure. I'd have to go where the project started. It's kind of funny. It started back in 2005 as a joke between my cousin and I. I mean, the first record, if you want to call it that record, that we recorded in maybe 2 hours in his bedroom. It wasn't, I didn't really listen to quote unquote grindcore back then. But either way, I always wanted to do a real record with it. So a couple years ago, I put out Pussy Jams, and
that was my introduction
too. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that was a big comeback. But as far as bands that really inspire me, obviously Napalm Death, but I'm a big Magrudergrind fan, Worm Rot, Rotten Sound, some more modern bands. Meth Leopard is really cool.
I haven't heard of them.
No? They just put out a new record this past year. And then another band that just put out another record is called Internal Rot from Australia. I don't know, there's just cool little pockets of grind all over the world.
That's cool. Australia's been putting out some grimy shit lately, too, just across the board. I don't know if you listened to that Werewolves record that just came out. I think that was this past month, too. Yeah, check out Werewolves. It's like kind of like a death grind kind of thing. And that's why I was interested to pick your brain on this topic too, because I kind of got into grindcore sort of late, and I tend to my picks in terms of this topic are either like really kind of basic bitch stuff or really weird underground, more recent bands that are kind of hybrids, usually like Blackened Grind and Math Grind, Death Grind. I'm really into like the weird fusion stuff.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I'm not, I wouldn't say I'm an expert by any means, but I always got my ears open, and anything that sounds like I just, especially when it comes to grindcore, I just like super pissed off, like super dirty, lots of feedback, crazy blast beats, anything that has anything of that type of stuff going on, I'm pretty much all about it.
Cool. But yeah, well, you did mention Napalm Death, so I mean that seems like an obvious
they're
that we
pretty
need
much
to talk about.
Yeah, they're pretty much the godfathers of grind. And I don't know if you've ever read it before, but Albert Mudrian, who's the editor of Decibel, he put out a really cool book called Choosing Death, I think it's called. And, it's the whole history of grindcore and death metal, and the book actually starts out though with Napalm Death kind of starting. I think it was called the Mermaid Bar. It's like this bar they played at all the time, but it's basically kind of where grindcore started. And at the time, nobody was doing what they were doing, and they just kept wanting to be faster and faster and faster. Yeah, and I don't know. Napalm Death is one of those cool bands because they have so many different periods, and I love pretty much all their stuff. But I kind of I know there's all the purists out there who scum or From Enslavement to Obliteration or nothing, but and I love those records. But I mean, I would almost argue that they've gotten better with age. I mean, their last couple records were so fucking good, and yeah, whatever their newest one was called, I can't recall off the top of my head, but that record was fucking amazing. And I mean, you got to consider these guys are pushing what 50 mid 50s. I mean, they've been doing it for a long time, and
Yeah.
they still sounding better than some of the so many young bands coming out.
Yeah, Throes of Joy in the Jaws of Defeatism. What a great title too. So that I had to look it up again because I'd forgotten. But yeah, that was one of my top, I'd say like 20 albums of last year. And I agree, man. Like I've never been like the biggest Napalm Death fan, like not a diehard. Like I've obviously heard their stuff over the years, but this was the album honestly that like where I was like, okay, this is the album for me. Like I think it's I would argue based on what I've heard that this might be their best record yet, and especially like from the more typical stuff to the more like they have that song like Joie de n'a pas vivre, which is like super like almost like blackened. And then of course you've got the A Belly Full of Salt and Spleen, which I could talk about forever, just that song, which is just that weird experimental journey that it takes you on. And it's just such a cool record. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. They're not afraid to go different places. It's my experience, and sometimes with different forums and things like that. In terms of grindcore, is there's a lot of purists out there in the grind scene that only want it to be one thing. It can only be like recorded in a shitty basement or something, and it has to be almost unintelligible, and the vocals have to be a certain way, and I see it all the time that people will be like, this isn't grind, or but
Yeah,
I mean,
it's not true grind. It's false
yeah,
grind.
which I don't really give a fuck about that kind of stuff, and that's what I like about Napalm Death is like, they're not afraid to do weird stuff, and I mean, are you gonna sit there and tell Napalm Death that they're not fucking grindcore? Like they pretty much invented the genre. So
yeah, that elitism seeps into everything, and it really does get annoying. And I noticed that particularly with grindcore and slam. Like I hear a lot about like false grind and false slam, and people take it very seriously. And I'm just like, dude, whatever. Like if it's good, it's good. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, especially the older I get, it's like, I'm not trying to impress anyone.
Yeah.
And especially when it comes to doing Grind of the Dead, I mean, it's pretty much for me. It's cool that people enjoy it, and that the word has kind of gotten out there, and I kind of have a little bit of a following now, which is awesome. But at the end of the day, I mean, Pussy Jams was literally straight up. That was like 5 years worth of just riffs I just had because I've always mainly been a vocalist, but I love to play guitar, and but just all the bands I've ever done, I've always been doing vocals. So I just had riffs and riffs and riffs, and I had nothing to do with them. And then when that kind of finally started to come about, it just all kind of came together. And I know, that record was a little bit of everything.
Yeah, it really is. It's all over the place.
But that's because it was me just unloading like years of riffs, and I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna put everything I have into this, and I got all those guest vocalists on board, and I just wanted to make it as like wacky as possible. And
well, it was definitely that. Wacky is a good word for it.
Yeah,
right down to the cover.
Yeah, and then kind of got that out of my system, and then when I sat down and was ready to make another record, I was then able to be more focused and kind of really think about how I wanted the future sound to be.
Yeah, because No Lives Matter is a completely different kind of album. Like it's much more streamlined, kind of serious, more focused thing. And it surprised me. Like it kind of caught me off guard. I wasn't sure what to expect because all I had to go off of was Pussy Jams at that point. and I was like, whoa, okay, so there's more to this too. Like that
I mean, I didn't want to be like that, like that potty band or whatever. I kind of got it. Yeah, I kind of got it out of my system, and then I kind of wanted to redefine what I wanted the band to be, and No Lives Matter was definitely like heavily influenced by like bands like Full of Hell and just like those like super raw but brutal bands, and I mean that whole album, like since in the studio it's all just me. so I record everything except the drums. The drums are, programmed, but I do have a live drummer, so everything, we make it so it's doable. I hate when it's possible drums, but yeah. As far as No Lives Matter, I mean, that was all. The entire record was done on one track, and then we cut it up afterwards. So because I wanted that to have the feel of like a live setting. And it's just like boom, 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 everything flowing right into another. All the feedback matches up, and it's almost, as if we are playing like a live set or something. It's just like boom, 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 boom.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Full of Hell too, because that definitely would have made my list. I think Trumpeting Ecstasy is probably like one of the best records of the past decade, really. I think when I did my decade list, I'm pretty sure I included that. If I didn't, I should have, because like every song on that is a banger. I was kind of curious. Did you listen to Weeping Choir, the follow up?
Yep,
What did you think of that one?
record? I like it. I haven't had as much time to sit down with it as Trumpeting Ecstasy, because I feel like, as far as Trumpeting Ecstasy, I think why so many people gravitated towards it and why it's so great is that Full of Hell is actually a pretty like inaccessible band. But Trumpeting Ecstasy is such an accessible record.
It is. In a weird way, it is.
So, I mean, I knew about them before that. I liked, it's called like Mutilations of something. I can't remember what their second record is called off the top of my head. But I dug them from that record. But even then, it's a lot of their stuff is like, again, inaccessible. It's hard to listen to sometimes. You have to kind of be in the mood for it. There's not always like hooks and things like that. So I have to be in the mood for them. But Trumpeting Ecstasy, I mean, right off the bat, that opening track where it's like the trees are in misery, and it just jumps right in. So and good. I remember they put out the single for Crawling Back to God.
Oh,
and
man.
I mean,
that ending part too
right
with
there.
the layered vocals. Crawling back to God.
Oh, yeah.
That gets me pumped every time. But yeah, I think that was hard for me though, because that was my introduction to Full of Hell, was that album. And so going from that to Weeping Choir, which was a little bit more kind of weird and experimental and kind of less accessible, was hard for me, because I just like wasn't prepared for that. So I don't like that one as much. I think it's still a really solid thing, and I enjoyed making a little a little meme out of the cover too, because it was right around the time that I had been watching Twin Peaks. And you've got the scene where his head pops and there's like smoke coming out of his neck with the little ball. And so I just took that scene and I put the Full of Hell logo over it. And they ended up actually resharing that on their Instagram, but I didn't get credited for it because I think it got passed around and I didn't have like a watermark on it or anything. So I was like, dang, I wish I could have gotten like an actual reshare from that. But it was still kind of cool to see the band sharing this thing that I had put together sort of in jest.
There you go.
Yeah.
I actually got I got a nice Twin Peaks poster right on my
Hell
wall.
Yeah, man, dude. I freaking love. I've got the new series right here, man.
Nice.
I could rewatch this over and over again.
Yeah, I got it was like the first time I ever bought anything it was a Facebook ad out of nowhere. I must have been talking about Twin Peaks or something, but it's cool. It's the Japanese poster for the movie Firewalk with Me.
Oh hell yeah!
It was like $25 and it came out great, and I just put it in a nice frame. But I mean, I know I never usually trust those Facebook ads because it's it's whatever I could say the dumbest thing, and the next thing I know, boom, there's
it's kind of creepy. It really is. Like Amazon too. It's like, dude, they're listening to everything. That's really disturbing.
Yeah, well, it actually, little side note here. Have you seen that movie? It's a pretty new film. It's David Cronenberg's son that directed it, Possessor. Have you seen that?
I want to. I've watched a bunch of I follow a bunch of YouTube channels that do like film analysis and stuff. So I know a lot about the movie from watching those videos, but I haven't actually seen the movie. But it looks really interesting.
Yeah, well, there's just a cool. It just kind of reminded me because there's a cool part in it where like this guy has a job, and at this job, he's just like kind of at a desk and everyone else is at a desk, and they're basically like looking in on people of like what they're doing, and they're basically data mining. But it's kind of cool to see how it's played out in this film.
Yeah,
and
that's
like so
interesting.
yeah, and so like they're looking for certain things. I can't remember what it is exactly, but like the guy shows up to work and they're like, you're on this today. So his job is just to look for it's drapes. So he has to look at and they're just going through like there's like a whole scene of like two people having sex with each other and he's just like like white sheer drapes. And then it goes to the next person and like they're just like watching in on people, but he's like noticing what they have for curtains and kind of making notes of it.
That's so crazy.
It's cool to see, but it's also creepy because it's like they're literally doing this in real life right now.
Yeah. It is really disturbing how like all that sort of Black Mirror stuff isn't all that far off.
Not at all, man. I mean, it's crazy how fast.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just thankful, and I think I'm sure that you're not probably too far off in age for me, but I mean, I'm just thankful. I remember the world without the internet.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I didn't even. I didn't get a computer in my house till like I was in 5th grade, so that was probably,
same. I think that was about the same time.
Yeah, probably around 1997, I want to say. And that was when it was all about, AOL.
Yeah, that's what. Yep, just AOL, dial-up modem, chat rooms. Like...
Yep, my mom getting pissed at me because I tried to call you and I couldn't get through. Like, oh, sorry, Mom, I was online.
I was trying to download an image and you interrupted it, so now I need to start over. It's gonna take another 30 minutes.
Kids these days have no idea. Like,
yeah, they really don't.
Going on Napster and it would take me days to download one song.
Yep.
Or even sometimes, you get like YouTube is taken so much for granted because I remember, and it's funny because now the same videos are on YouTube, but I remember downloading like live videos of like bands playing at Ozfest and things like that, and it was one song like a 3-minute video, and it would take me like 5 days to download the whole thing. And I remember you could like once it was at like 20%, you could start to play it, and I would just like keep watching it as much as I could.
Yeah.
And but even then, it usually had that like crappy early internet audio quality, and everything's blurry. But in my mind, I was like, I'm watching fucking Ozfest.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I could do a whole other video talking about how different just YouTube is from when I first got on it. It's like completely different, but yeah, another time. It's so different. Well, another band, like whenever, and going back to what I was saying, so I either listen to really weird, crazy, fusiony, obscure stuff, or the really kind of just like typical kind of stuff. So the first band that always comes to mind for me, though, when I hear the name Grindcore is Pig Destroyer. I feel like that was sort of my first real like understanding of what Grindcore was, and I remember vividly catching the music video for I think Grave Dancer on like Headbangers Ball, and so for me Terrifier is still one of those like watershed Grindcore albums, at least for like my personal development, like within metal and everything. That's the main one that always comes to mind. Of course, it's got that cover too that just like is cemented in your brain because it's just like tits, like that's basically. And then like the chick like looks all weird and stuff too, and that stark red background, like it just really. I remember seeing that too, and being like, what the fuck, like this is
that cover was done by the dude from Baroness, right? That's one of his covers, I think.
Is it? If it is, it's a little bit of a different style than some of his other.
Oh, maybe
stuff.
I'm thinking of.
Into that.
Oh no,
he did. He did the
Limb.
Phantom Limb. Yeah, he did.
Okay,
Phantom
yeah,
Limb.
I was getting confused. Yeah.
Also, tits.
I kind of Pig Destroyer is one of those weird bands for me because it's one of those bands like I always knew who they were and I've listened to them from time to time, but I've never fully latched onto them. So I know a lot. Like I know who they are. I know their record covers. I mean, the one song of theirs that really sticks in my brain the most though is that intro on that one album where it's like, like Jennifer was something whatever, and I can't remember.
That's
it's
Prowler
like
Prowler in the Yard.
Yeah, it's like that grotesque. I don't know. I like I said, it's one of those bands that's like I like them, but sometimes I also feel like they have like it's like a lot of riffs, and it's hard for me to like latch on to something
Yeah.
sometimes. I feel like it's just like
Because there's so many too.
riff, and it's kind of like spazzy. So I don't know. I'm like 50-50 on them. I guess I haven't given them enough of my time, but also like the few times I've really tried to sit down, I don't know. I kind of find that I'm not able to latch onto a lot of
Well,
things
yeah,
for some
especially
reason.
when they've got like 22 tracks on one album. Like, there's just like so much happening. And I have that same issue with some of their albums, but I find that Terrifier hooks me in pretty well because it's at the end of the day, it's only a 33-minute album too, so it goes by pretty fast. I will also say, and I said this in my tier list, that the newest one, Head Cage, is very different too because it's only 12 tracks. They're more kind of like standard length tracks, and it's almost like not even a grindcore album. I'd describe it as more of like a groove metal album in many areas. Like, it's much more focused on kind of more, I don't know, it's like a mix. And again, I guess it is kind of like a hybrid in a way too, which is probably something I like about it. But I think that one too might be something you could sink your teeth into a little bit more.
Yeah, I haven't dug into it. I remember listening to the couple singles that they put out, and again, like I remember on a couple of the grindcore forums, like a couple of Facebook groups I'm a part of, and a lot of people are like, this isn't fucking grindcore. Like, Pig Destroyer is dead to me, and it's like, come on, man. Like,
Yeah.
you can't just do the same thing over and over and over again.
Especially in grindcore, where it's like, if you just stick to the rule book, like, it's kind of all been done already in many ways too. So you gotta, like,
I mean,
yeah,
I feel like that's most genres. I mean, I don't know. What really new are you gonna do? You have to kind of inject some of your own personality into there. You know what I mean? That's what makes bands stand out to me. I mean, when you really break it down, I mean, what's the last like new mind blowing thing that's happened in music? Like, not really much. It's like it's all about your personality. It's all about your own distinct flavor that you're bringing to it.
yeah.
There hasn't been anything new in freaking rock metal like for the longest time. I mean, and I guess you could say like Gent is probably like one of the newest things, but I mean, in my mind, that's just people playing Meshuggah songs and.
Yeah, I mean, that's gotten pretty played too. I feel like the newer thing right now is implementation of like trap music and stuff into metal.
Yeah.
That seems to be the latest phase, and I know a lot of people hate that. I've heard some interesting uses of it though that I actually did like. And I'm just all on board for new things. And sometimes experimentation works out and sometimes it doesn't, but I just do get sick of hearing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I'm a little 50-50 on like a lot of the newer stuff I hear coming out. I mean, the trap stuff, I don't know. It makes me feel like an old man, but I just don't get it. Like, I don't get Ghost Main. I don't listen to like, and if I'm gonna, I honestly don't really listen to like a ton of rap and hip hop. Like, if I'm going to, I'm gonna listen to like, older stuff probably.
Wu-Tang Clan.
Yeah. Although I will say, I just picked up a cool record, from a band. It's like a group. I think it's a duo actually, but they're called Clipping.
Oh, I've heard of them. Yeah.
Dude, it's called the record's called Visions of Bodies Being Burned. Dude,
I'll have to check that out. I don't think I've listened
to it. Oddly enough, the main rapper, I guess, is like a Broadway actor. He's like one of the main guys in that Hamilton play.
Oh.
Which I'm not a musical guy, but I've heard of the musical. But yeah, he's like one of the main actors in that. And
That's funny.
That one really caught me off guard. And funny enough, I was watching Anthony Fantano's like records of the year, and I take him with a little bit of a grain of salt, but I've always kind of enjoyed.
No, I like him
for the most part. I think he's a pretty well-rounded dude, and the only opinion of his that I hate is he trashes on Deftones all the time, and I'm like, and that's my favorite band. So I don't agree with you, man. And he hated Ohms, and I was like, ooh.
Yeah, I know, and I loved it too. So yeah, that we definitely don't align, but I'm always respectful of different people's opinions. But yeah, he's developed like a reputation for just not liking Deftones for some reason or another. And I mean, they're not for everyone. Like, I've met other people who just genuinely don't like them too, but Where are you
Yeah, I
gonna
mean,
go?
I guess I can see in some respects, but I mean, it is kind of funny in a way that Deftones is definitely one of those bands where it's like you either like are obsessed with them or you can't stand them. I
Yeah,
don't ever see too many like middle ground
middle
people.
ground. Yeah, because I
But I
was
mean,
definitely in the obsessed category for a long time.
oh
Like,
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think
yeah,
it depends on when you encountered them. Like I discovered them, I was probably 11 years old, and I found Around the Fur. Like White Pony wasn't out yet. It was just
yeah,
Adrenaline and Around the Fur, and it's funny. I still like distinctly remember the exact like where I was. I had to go to work with my stepdad that day, and there was nothing to do there. He worked at a place where you can like rent lawnmowers and just various yard machinery, and he was the guy out back to like fix the machines. And some other guy that worked there liked like rock music, and he was like, hey, you can look at my CDs if you want. And then I had seen Deftones in like Circus magazine, and they looked like a heavy band to me. And so I saw Around the Fur, and I'm like, oh fuck yeah, now I can hear what this band sounds like, because back then you kind of had to actually have the physical album.
yeah.
And dude, like the second My Own Summer came on, I think I didn't even hear the rest of the album. I just kept hitting back, and I'm just like,
Such an
fuck,
addictive
dude.
song. One of the
Oh
first
yeah,
metal songs I think I learned how to play on guitar too, because it's a
yeah,
fairly basic riff. I mean,
yeah.
most
But
of their
it's
riffs
so
are,
distinct.
but
It's so
yeah,
distinct, man. And I mean, you like when you hear that, and I totally agree too. Recently, I was reading an article with Terry Date, and he was asked like what his favorite thing that he's ever recorded, and he said the best sound I've ever gotten was the opening drum sounds on My Own Summer.
yeah, that's just so.
And
It's I heard it in my head. Just you hadn't even said it yet, and I knew what you were gonna say. Because yeah, it's just that. It's such a simple little
but
thing, but it kicks off the whole thing, and
oh yeah, but the
it's
funny thing is
perfect.
like it's so well recorded that like when I see live videos, it just like them doing that same thing live like doesn't compare, because it's like sounds so much weaker live, and I'm like, oh man, like they just nailed it on that record. But I mean
Yeah, man.
that album is a 10 out of 10 for me, but
Yeah.
it's so rooted in nostalgia for me that
Oh yeah.
I can't take the rose glasses off. So
Yeah. Same. Well, flipping back to some grindcore stuff, what are
yeah,
some other major albums that you would say are among your favorites and should be considered sort of the best in the genre?
sure. Well, number one I got on my list is Magrudergrind's self-titled album. Um, they're just fucking crazy band. I think it's just a three-piece: drummer, guitarist, vocalist. I want to say they're from like the DC area, somewhere around there, but I don't know. They're just like super pissed off. They got a
Best way.
cool. They have a cool guitar tone too. They have a pretty like unique guitar tone. It's like kind of. I don't want to say buzzsaw because it's not like HM2 type sound, but it kind of has a weird, I don't know, gristle to it.
Hmm.
That when I hear it, I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. But I mean, they got that album, and then they just a couple years ago they put out their second album. It was just called Two, and then they got a bunch of EPs and splits and stuff. Like every other grind band. But I think their first record is by far their best one.
Yeah, and I like that you're mentioning the guitar tone because I think that is like a good way that some of these bands sort of start to differentiate themselves from each other. It's like those little subtle differences because again, like at bass, like if we're doing grindcore, we're talking blast beats, very fast kind of punk rock chord progressions basically, and just sort of like indecipherable vocals. And if you just stick to that, everybody starts to sound the same. But if you can do a little inflection with your voice here or like add a little
Yeah,
twist on the distortion or something like that helps things stand out. And I think that makes me think of one of my other picks, talking about a much newer band that has become one of my favorites in the genre lately. It's a Swedish band called Beaten to Death. um, I reviewed their album Necronomicon, and then er wait, am I saying that name right? Maybe, I feel like it's a twist on the name Necronomicon. But in any case, and then last year they came out with this 4 EP series called Lot Mar. and each one is just a 4-track EP, but they're all based on different forests. And like they've got this forest in Sweden, they've got the Suicide Forest from Japan, they've got the Forest Moon of Endor from Star Wars. Like each one has its own like conceptual piece, and so they each have kind of a different vibe to them, and it comes through like just in the music. But the other thing that really stands out to me about them is their tone. Like I think it's mostly the bass tone that I'm picking up on, but it's like a really crunchy, just I don't even know how to describe it. You listen to this band and they have a very specific sound. And they also mix in a lot of like weird melodic elements too. They're very experimental. There's even elements that sound almost like something out of a post-hardcore song or something like that. But for the most part, it's like, straight. I wouldn't call them anything besides grindcore, except the fact that they throw in that more kind of experimental piece. So highly
Nice.
recommend Beaten to Death. They're super cool.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I never heard of them actually. So, but that sounds pretty rad. That whole concept. And again, yeah, like I said, I really like bands that kind of aren't afraid to step outside the lines a little bit and do something a little different. But yeah, I mean, another band I got on my list. I'm sure you probably heard of them, but band Wormrot, and I'd probably peg. I mean, all their albums are great. I'd probably peg their latest album, Voices. I think it came out like 2016. But again, another album where they kind of try a whole lot of different stuff on this album. There's like a lot of melodic parts on it that initially I actually was kind of surprised the first time I heard it, and I don't know, they're just a cool ass band, man. Tons of energy.
I'm very aware of them, but I haven't listened to them enough, so I need to get on that.
I mean, definitely in terms of grindcore, I'd put them way at the top in my list, and I'm actually super bummed. But when No Lives Matter was first released, the album release show for that was supposed to be with Wormrot. They were touring. They were touring the U.S. and the local promoter near here booked them, and he put us on the show for like direct support, and it was supposed to be like awesome. Our album release, and that was right around when like Donald Trump like first got elected, and then they decided to cancel their tour due to like political unrest or whatever. And I was like,
really?
Yeah, like they just felt like it wasn't a good time to come over to the U.S. because it was kind of in Trump's early stages when a lot of people were like, like put up the wall, like
that whole thing,
fuck foreigners and all that stuff, and everyone was like getting upset about this and that, but they canceled the whole tour.
I think they would have been fine. In fact, I think they would have been really well received because like grindcore to me is like the music of dissent in many ways. So maybe people needed some more of that at that time.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, I can only imagine how it must feel to be like a foreign band, and then like seeing on the media how America appears. I mean, I know they toured here before, but they're from I want to say the Philippines or
really
somewhere like Indonesia or. Can't remember off the top of my head exactly where, but I actually it's pretty cool. I follow Singapore. That's what it is. Yeah. I follow the vocalist on Facebook, and he does a lot of he's also an artist, and he does a lot of like live streams where he'll just be drawing, and you can chat with him and stuff, and seems like a really nice, cool, level-headed guy.
Yeah, that's the fun thing too about like these more extreme genres is when you get to sit down with people like yourself and just see that like they're usually just normal people. In fact, sometimes they're like the nicest, like most caring people too. Like I always joke, like I've had Ethan McCarthy on here, and people always talk about just like what a sweet guy he is, and he makes this like just insane music, and his voice on his albums are just like ridiculous. But he's
his
like
vocals
the nicest guy.
Are straight filthy, man. I don't know if you heard his other band that he had a while back, but my introduction to him was his band Clinging to the Trees of a Forest Fire.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh man, can't remember what the album's called now, but
Yeah, I remember checking those out. They're just so fucking
Yeah,
raw.
yeah.
It's
I just remember hearing it. I'm like, man, this band is pissed, but it
he,
was
he
so
has
good.
he has one of my like probably top 3 favorite like just vocals of the modern era of like kind of what's happening now in metal. Like he is just unmatched for that low just bellow that he has that just
Oh yeah,
I can't even imitate it. Like it's just one of a kind. It's so crazy.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah,
No,
and I mean, speaking of which, too, like I'd even include like Vermin Womb kind of on this list too.
oh
I
yeah,
know they're not necessarily. Some people would argue they're not really like a straight up grindcore band. There's definitely a lot of like kind of crust, kind of black metal in there, even too, like death metal elements. It kind of runs the gamut. But like of his projects, it's sort of like the closest I would associate with just grindcore, and I really like. I've liked everything that he's put out as
yeah.
Vermin Womb.
I'm in the same boat, man. He's just puts out filthy tunes, and I'm all here for it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, Decline was the last one. Although if I recall, I think they were working on a follow up to that. I can't believe that was all the way back in 2016. It's already
Yeah,
almost 5 years old. That's
time,
crazy.
time just freaking goes by now, man. Like and a lot of times I get so caught up in working, being a family man, all this other stuff, and then by the time I get to sit down with some albums, it's like, oh shit, this record's like old now.
Yeah, dude. It's there's because there's just so much too. Like
I
there's
know.
just
Well,
so much coming out.
and it's like, it's like a catch 22 because it's cool that you don't need much to make a record these days. You can sit in your bedroom and pump it out, and people are just albums are coming out all the time. But at the same time, I kind of it's like a little bit of overload, and I sometimes I'll be like, oh, I'd love to hear something new, but then I almost get like bombarded. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go back to what I'm used to here and comfortable with, and then I don't know. I can never seem to find a good balance sometimes.
It's hard.
Because I want it to. It's like I want to soak in all this new stuff, but I want it to. Like I need music to affect me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I need it to make it like and maybe maybe this is just me being too much of a dreamer, but like I know I like albums to like have profound effect and meaning, and
like connected to certain periods of your life and
yeah, exactly,
those associations.
And I mean, it bums me out sometimes that I have so many memories of like growing up, and I guess maybe that's just part of how it goes. It's like those are your formative years, and you find these bands, and they kind of like become the soundtrack of those stages. But
yeah,
now that a lot of my days are just like wake up, go to work, like do the family thing, and like I try to fit some tunes in between. But I mean, that's not really a lot of these days just mesh together. It's not really something that's going to attach itself to a
yeah, especially now. I struggle with that too, like just in my role, because I have to stay current like constantly. I'm like constantly listening to new records, like pretty much every day it's a new album for me, sometimes multiple in one day, and I'm always sampling probably dozens within the same day, just with all the stuff that comes through my email. So I kind of have that issue sometimes too, where I'll throw on Around the Fur or White Pony, and it takes me back to very specific experiences I was having listening to that album, or the self-titled Slipknot album, or whatever. And I just don't have, I feel like I'm kind of losing some of that because I have to move on so quickly to the next thing that it doesn't have enough time to really become like a tied to some specific thing that's happening right now. But then I look back to like there are albums within the past 10 years or so that I'll go back and listen to. Like I did a Periphery tier list recently, and I was realizing that I do have pretty strong memories associated with most of those albums, even like the later ones that came out. So there are still some of those, but it isn't the same though, because it used to be like I would get an album and I would wear that fucking album out for
that's
at least like a month,
man.
and I probably wouldn't listen to a whole lot else besides that during that period, and then it would be on to the next one like a month later, and then I'm deep into that one. So it's just so different because there was just less access. We didn't have Spotify, we didn't have
No.
Bandcamp. We like you said, we had Napster where it took you, multiple days to download one song in some cases.
Yeah.
So
Or like you had to actually go out and find it. And I mean, and
we'd go to
me,
the
like,
library sometimes and we'd like rent CDs. Like that's how I got
yeah.
Adrenaline.
Well, even okay, this is a bit of a side note here, but I got a cool little story that kind of goes along with this. So, when I was in summer camp, the summer between 8th grade going into high school, so I was like 12 years old or 13 years old, but this random dude, another camper there, he had 2 CDs one day, like no cases, just the discs. And he's like, yeah, I don't really like these. Do you want them? And I was like, sure, why not? So the CDs themselves had no labeling on them, so I had no idea. But I put in one of them I didn't care for, but the other one I put in, I'm like, I'm still pretty much a new metal guy at this time, and I put it in, I'm like, what the fuck is this? And it was just like so crazy. And I spent a whole week listening to it. I had no idea who this band was, and I had no way to really check. And a little bit of time goes by, and I'm hanging out with my cousin one day, and he's like, "Hey, have you ever heard of this band, the Dillinger Escape Plan?" And I was like, "No." And I'm like, "But you need to hear this crazy ass band that some dude gave me." And I was like, "I don't know who it is." I put in the CD. He's like, "Dude, this is Dillinger Escape Plan," and it was Calculating Infinity, and I'm just like,
yeah.
"What?" And so it was just kind of cool because I was listening to this band for like a week, 2 weeks, and I had no idea who they were. But it just like blew my mind because I'd never heard music played like that before, and I kind of miss just like coming across something and just having your whole fucking universe like
just
implode and be like,
well, and that has been cool with like looking at all this underground music that gets sent to me all the time, because I do still get to have those moments. Like, I came across, Beaten to Death, and I was like, whoa, this is totally different. Or even like weird shit now too. Like I heard that Poppy album and was like, what is this? Like, this is
I love Poppy,
shit.
man.
Like, yeah, dude, like that
stuff's
cool. Like I live for those moments.
Hell yeah. Yeah, that was the last concert I went to before COVID.
Oh,
I saw
really?
her. Yeah, it was really cool too because it was a tiny, it's like a pretty small little bar club in Boston. And
wasn't she touring with like Deftones or
no?
Well,
like she was supposed to be. That tour got canceled.
Oh,
the
that's
opening
right.
band, I can't remember the name off the top of my head. It's like
I just missed her because she came
name,
through and I didn't realize she was even coming. I like got into the album, I think like right around the time that she would have been in town, and then found out later that she was here. That would have been a really fun show to go to.
Yeah, it was cool as hell because again, there's like a pretty small club. Like I was almost right up to the stage. And I mean, I don't even think there was a green room there. Like I saw her just kind of pop around from like where the bathrooms were, and she just like walked right up to the stage and just started playing.
That's awesome.
But I've been jamming the hell out of that record, so it was cool to see like a new band that I'd never seen before. But like I knew all the songs because I'm a sucker for like pop, man. I'm a big pop fan. Not shit they play on the radio. I'm more of like I'm a huge Grimes fan. Stuff like that, like stuff they're not going to really play on the radio, but
stuff that'll get big on like YouTube or something as opposed to the radio.
Yeah, and like
I like finding stuff like that. It's much more interesting. Like you get a lot of weird little like, it's like real. To me, it's the difference between like. Because pop can be art. Like, there's plenty of pop songs I love that I would consider to be art, but pop can also just be, like, processed, cynical, from a factory bullshit.
Oh, yeah.
From a producer's hand. But there are a lot of people, like, on YouTube I have been noticing, like Poppy, that, like, take this seriously and, like, want to do something interesting and actually take the time to craft something that's not just, the latest flip side of the exact same thing that just came out a week ago,
Oh yeah, I don't know. I mean, pop again. There's a lot of cool things you can do with it. Like pretty much any genre. You just have to put in your own unique
Yeah.
style, and I mean, you can still make it even if you're not necessarily on the radio. I mean,
Yeah.
again, like I know Poppy's pretty big. You know, Grimes is pretty big. I mean, she's dating fucking Elon Musk, so you know she did something right.
Yeah, I know. That shit's
And
crazy.
then I mean, I still don't. She's weird as hell, and I still don't get the whole baby name thing. But I like her music a lot.
Yeah, it's like whatever, man. Are you familiar with The Armed?
I saw your video on them actually. I'd never heard of them before, but
Yeah, they're interesting because they were kind of more of just sort of a hardcore metalcore kind of band. I love their album Untitled. The cover is like a spoof on the David Bowie. I forget the name of the album where he's got the like rainbow lightning bolt like face. It's like the same
oh
idea,
yeah,
except it's like a bald hipster looking dude smoking a cigarette, and he's got the same makeup. Super aggressive album, but just like pretty straightforward kind of stuff. But then with their last album, Only Love, and now clearly with this new one, which they're actually calling ultra pop, it seems like they're really leaning into it. They had said they set out to kind of like make their own version of a pop album. And so it's kind of been interesting to watch their progression because they are moving into this more, it's like these familiar elements of what I compared to things like the Killers and like UK kind of pop and stuff like that, but still with like some hardcore aggression boiled into it. It's pretty different. So yeah, but definitely another band kind of worth watching if you're interested in that kind of stuff.
yeah. I mean, I'll
Yeah.
definitely check it out for sure. I mean, like I said, I don't know. It's kind of funny. I'm sure you've probably seen that meme where it's like, you know, it says like my music taste, and it's like the corpse paint guy on the bench, and then it's like also my music taste, and it's like some like
Oh yeah, that's the sweet
cheery girl with
yeah.
the ice cream, and it's like that's totally me, man. Like I could be, you know, listening to like Nails or something like super pissed off, and then the next track is like Lady Gaga or something
Yeah,
like that.
dude,
I'm down for both. So
yeah, and I know that's part of the reason why we were wanting to do this for a while, because you kept telling me like, dude, I think you and I are on the same wavelength, and the more you say
yeah.
that, it's so true, because I'm the same way. Like I just, when I'm not listening to a new album, I usually just put my phone on shuffle, and there's just like tens of thousands of songs on there from all different artists, from like 90s one hit wonders to like the latest Death Grind album. And so yeah, it'll be Full of Hell 1 second, and then the next song after is like fucking Jewel or some shit like that.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's like the most random thing, and I'll sing along to all of it. So yeah, dude,
Yeah.
I
No,
love variety.
I have quite a few songs from my childhood that are just like permanently, you know, in my head, and they'll all like I'm always down to jam them.
Yeah.
You know songs like one of my favorites is you know the song "Go West," like King of Wishful Thinking.
Mm-hmm.
You know that song? You
Yeah.
know, jams like that. I'm like all about that, like late '80s, early '90s, like big pop. Where just like
Yeah.
all the like they throw like so many instruments in there. They got fucking horns. They got backup singers. They got
dude.
I don't know, just like everything going on. I'm just like
pop on the radio used to be something so different. I feel like
I know.
like it was
Yeah.
like an experience, like, and there was so much put into it.
Yeah.
And you still got some artists doing that. Like I'll give Lady Gaga credit usually for like she's one of, I feel like she's one of the last like pop stars that seems to be doing that in terms of like what's mainstream. But yeah, it's harder to find, like it's just a different vibe. Like and
Yeah.
I love that stuff. I'm such a sucker for that like 80s pop, and then of course 90s alternative, and
Oh yeah.
just so many, like you go through my playlist, and there's so many like little obscure songs where like that was like their one. I still have like fucking like Breakfast at Tiffany's is like in my phone, like buried in
Yeah,
there, man.
and I
Like,
mean-
shit like that.
And I mean, I take all that stuff like, and I put it into Grind of the Dead. I mean, you may not be able to hear it sometimes, but I mean, I don't just pull from the grindcore pool when I'm writing songs or putting things together. I mean, I'm kind of pulling from everything, and I'm not afraid to put something different in there that I'm sure plenty of people might even look at me in the project and be like, the shit's not grind, bro. But I mean,
Seemed pretty grindy to me. I enjoyed it.
yeah,
I
I
had a
mean,
good time with it.
I
What?
do my best.
Yeah. Would you say there are other like grind projects out there that you feel like are also doing a good job of that in terms, again, in keeping with sort of like the best grindcore albums and bands out there? Like, who do you think is really carrying the torch in terms of doing something new and interesting, or pulling in elements of kind of other genres and making it interesting?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I can speak for like super new right now. I mean, the list I got here, anyways. A couple of these albums are a couple years old by this point, but I mean, um, there's another really great band, PLF, and I believe it stands for Pretty Little Flower, if I'm not mistaken. But they have a pretty cool record. I think they have a couple, but the one I listen to a lot is Devious Persecution and Wholesome Slaughter.
Wholesome Slaughter. What a great name.
Yeah, and they're kind of a little bit more of a thrashier grind band. It's just all straight like heavy ass power chord,
Nice.
type riffs. And another band, well, it's actually kind of more in line with Grind of the Dead. But this is a one man band, but I guess the guy literally does everything, like plays the drums and everything. And I'm gonna totally butcher this, but I want to say he's from Russia, but I may be mistaken. But the band is called Parlamentarisk Sodami.
Jesus,
And,
that's a mouthful.
Yeah, but dude, like when we're done talking here, you should put their record on. It fucking rips. That one's kind of super spazzy too. It's just like tons of riffs, just non-stop blasts. But like when I learned it was one guy too, it just and I can't recall what other projects he's done, but I know he's done other stuff. There's a pretty cool band that's someone just turned me on to, actually, from Japan, called Bathtub Shitter. And I just thought that was...
The Japanese have like a totally unique style to their grind scene too. Like when you talk about Japanese grind, like I can specifically hear a very different tone in my head, and the vocals tend to be a lot more like chaotic too in this weird way.
Yeah, Japan's on a whole other level with everything, man. Yeah, I never heard of him, and there's this one dude who was it used to be in the scene around here, and his band was actually called Gorpedo, and we did a bunch of shows with them. Yeah, but he's like a big grindcore nerd, so he's always posting stuff, and I'll always check it out. But I saw him post it, I'm like, Bathtub Shitter, huh? I'm like, that's a great band name right there. So. And yeah, it's just kind of what you would kind of expect. Like I guess if like weird spazzy anime was a grindcore band. I mean, I don't know. That's just the vibe I get. It's just kind of like
awesome.
Spazzy and all over the place, but it's definitely very like Japanese.
It almost sounds like you're describing Psy in a way. Like I don't know if you're a Psy fan, but they're definitely not a grindcore band, but they're very Japanese. We put it at that. Yeah, and there are definitely like grindy parts to their music.
It's one of those bands, like I've heard the name so many times, but I couldn't tell you like what they sound like.
Psy is crazy, dude. Well, it's hard to describe them too, because they're kind of like poppy, and in fact, like that was my closest comparison I could think of when I was talking about poppy. Was like it reminds me the most of Psy in a weird way, because 1 second with Psy it'll be like epic like power metal, and then the next minute it'll be like J-pop, and then it'll be grindcore, and then it'll be black metal. Like they're just like all over the place, and it's just like completely different from moment to moment, so you can't really like tack them down with a specific genre tag. But
yeah, I'll have to check them out for sure.
I think another album I do want to throw in on the more kind of basic side, but I got into Lockup a little bit late, but that album Demonization from 2017, like something about that just really resonated with me. That was just a super heavy record, and I also wanted to bring them up too, because I just heard that Thomas Lindbergh of fucking At the Gates just came back to be the vocalist again, and I'm like, dude, I cannot wait to hear that, because honestly, I haven't been a big fan of the comeback At the Gates records, but I loved what he did with the Lurking Fear. And so the idea of more Thomas Lindbergh over kind of like D beats and just like super raunchy, fast stuff like that excites me because he's got such a weird voice. But the newer At the Gate stuff just doesn't really do it for me.
I liked their first comeback record.
At War with Reality, I think.
Yeah, I liked that one pretty good. I mean, I felt like it was kind of where it needed to be in terms of kind of trying to take what At the Gates was and then kind of try to bring it into a more modern time. I mean, I don't know. I feel like that's such a hard balance sometimes when you're kind of like one of those like nostalgia bands and like everybody wants, like Slaughter of the Soul again. But I mean, you can't really do that again because you already got it, And I know I've been that type of fan before too with certain bands where I'm like, just give me more of this. But I don't know. You kind of can't in a way, It already happened.
And you can't recreate it.
Yeah, and you can tell when bands are phoning it in, and usually when bands are just trying to give you that same product again, it sucks. Because it has to be natural. It has to be, from the heart. It has to be like, the band has to be wanting to do it, and not when you're doing something to try to appease people, it's usually trash.
Yeah, I mean, it's true, dude. That's why I always say, like, even if a band goes in a direction that I don't like the go-to example I always have is Opeth. I don't really like newer Opeth stuff, but
same here, man.
I would rather he do that than continue to pretend with the death metal stuff. If he doesn't want to do death metal anymore, I don't want to hear depressing. I mean, Opeth albums are depressing anyways, but even more depressing in the fact that it's this old guy just doing what the fans want because that's what the fans want, even though he doesn't want to do it. I would rather him go off and still have passion for his music and make this other style that just isn't really for me. And that matters so much because I listen to like newer Slayer albums or Metallica albums and I'm just like, man, fuck this. Like this, I don't like it sucks.
Yeah.
Like I'd rather you do something different. Like just do.
I hear what you mean. I mean, like that last Slayer record, I was kind of like, and I mean, even the tones in that record, like it just sounded so weak to me. But Metallica, like I don't know, I really couldn't care less about half the shit they've released for the last like 15 years. Probably.
I could care less.
I mean, I'm down with their 80s stuff. I'm down with their thrash stuff. But like, I don't give a fuck about Load, Reload. I don't. The only time I've never even listened to Saint Anger all the way through because I can't. It's like physically unlistenable at times. And
I will say I will eternally have that song stuck in my head though. That was. I think it was on one of those albums and then it was on like a soundtrack for some action movie. I want to say it was like a Tom Cruise movie or some shit.
Yeah, Mission Impossible.
It's that down, down,
yeah.
down,
Hey.
Yeah, here we go now. Yeah. Dude, because that came out when I was in like middle school, I want to say, or maybe that was grade school. I don't even remember. Time flies by, but like I remember you could not escape that song, and even little kids were like singing and imitating that song, and it is just fried into my brain. Yeah, and I think that I kind of like it just because I can't stop, and there's something catchy about it, but it's definitely not like a good song.
Yeah, no, I mean that was like tail end of like Reload era, right before they went into Saint Anger, and I just remember too, it killed me, but there was in high school, there was this one kid that kind of like annoyed me, but he was one of those like 80s metal is real metal, like, Mudvayne is false metal, and he'd always try to rag on me for like listening to like Slipknot and stuff like that. And then like Saint Anger came out, and I was like, and I just remember going up to him like, so Metallica's new metal now, huh? Like, what do you think of that? And he just was like, he just couldn't take it, and it's like, but
the cognitive dissonance was breaking his brain.
Yeah, I don't know, but I still can't get past the fact, like, how were you all sitting in the studio, and like, you're just like, this is it. That's it.
Nobody decided that maybe this isn't the best idea. I don't know.
I mean, even if you wanted to keep those songs, like, never mind the songwriting. Like, just the overall production, like, who heard that snare drum and was like, that's it?
Yep.
Like,
that's it.
I mean, like you're fucking Metallica. You're the biggest metal band of all time, and you want that to be a representation of who you are in the early 2000s. Like,
Yeah.
it just kind of blows my mind. Like, how? I mean, I don't know if I know. I've seen the movie. Like, I know they are all getting sober, so maybe that has something to do with it. Like,
there's that, and then I just feel like there's this phenomenon that I think all people who, regardless of whether they're in music or film or whatever, you get so famous to the point that you like lose touch with reality. Like, I feel like that's a big part of it, and you're constantly surrounded by people that are like, just, you know, they're yes men basically. Like, everybody's just telling you like, hey, great, this is awesome. Like, nobody's telling you no. And so I think you start to, I mean, great example of this. I was talking about YouTube channels I like to watch, and I'm so addicted to Red Letter Media. That's like my all-time favorite YouTube channel. And it's just a bunch of, for people who don't know what it is, a bunch of Midwestern guys just either reviewing movies, or they do this series called Best of the Worst, where they have all these old cassettes of like really terrible B movies, and they'll watch like 3 of them and then vote on which one is the best one out of these terrible movies. And it's just hilarious. But they were talking about like the 2016 Ghostbusters movie, and just same situation. It's like, how is it that nobody on this production team with all these people involved stopped and went, maybe this sucks? Like, it's like, no, everybody, and you watch the interviews and they play little clips, and it's like everybody's in this bubble together where it's like, oh my God, this is hilarious, and we think it's funny, so like it's gonna be great. And then like people outside the bubble finally see it, and they're like, this is fucking garbage. And like, just nobody realizes it because you're like trapped in this like,
I mean, I already hated that movie before I even saw it, because I'm just like, Ghostbusters like is such a huge part of my childhood, and I mean, right off the bat when I heard of that, I'm like, I don't know about that. And you know, and then of course all those people came out, they're like, you know, if you hate this movie, it's because you're sexist, like you're against females in leading roles. And it's like, well, no, that's not it at all. Yeah, like, no. If it's trash, it's trash. I don't care who's in it. Because I feel like even if it was an all male cast of like modern comedians, I think it still would have sucked.
Well, I agree with that. And, you know, there's plenty of proof of that, because there are plenty of like really great like female-led movies that do really well because they're good movies. Like Kill Bill is always one of the first one that comes to mind. Like that movie, both of those movies are incredible. And they're just carried by Uma Thurman and what a badass she is. And it's because it's a really good movie. You make a bad movie, and it's a bad movie. But I think that those narratives come out because I think the actors and the directors honestly believe that narrative, because in their brain, again, they've been locked in this, they've been surrounded by people who have all told them like, no, this movie's great. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be the best thing. And it like breaks their brain. And the only reason they can come up for it was like, well, clearly it didn't suck. So obviously like, it's just bad people. There are bad actors that are ruining my movie. Like,
and the thing is too. Like I think Kristen Wiig is funny.
Oh yeah, everyone in that movie is funny.
Yeah, like
it's just a bad movie.
I thought Bridesmaids was really fucking funny.
Oh man, I love Bridesmaids.
So my problem is not with the people at all, but like the whole idea was trash. Like when I read about that when I read that like the main ghost was like. He was just like upset that like people bullied him or some shit like that. I can't remember the exact reasoning, but it was just like such a trash storyline.
Look up the Red Letter Media Ghostbusters review. I think you'll really get a kick out of it because they really like dig into all the stuff that you're saying, and it's very entertaining.
Yeah, I held off in a long time, and then and one night I just had nothing to do, and my girlfriend like was sleeping, and I just happened to be on. So I'm like, all right, I guess now's the time. And I only like even like 10 minutes in, I was always like, what the fuck, man? Like, not good. But yeah, that just hurt me because Ghostbusters is like,
it's a classic. It's like a perfect.
So
movie.
Near and dear to my heart, and actually, I want to pick them up, but I don't know if you've seen them lately. But at Walmart, they're Walmart exclusives. The old 80s action figures, Kenner brought them back.
Oh, that's awesome. I had those too growing up.
Yeah, me too. I think everyone did, man. But so that you can get all 4 of the Ghostbusters, Slimer, and the Marshmallow Man, and like the packaging is the same. Oh, the artwork is the same. It's like a complete reproduction, and like I just haven't I mean, it's not a terrible price, but they're like $15 a figure. I just
That's
haven't
not
like,
too bad.
yeah, but like my problem is like I want them all. So
Yeah, same. Yeah, my wife would have that issue too. She's a big collector of stuff like that. Well, I do need to start winding down pretty soon, so maybe we could
sure.
each share like one more album, and then we could talk a little bit more about your latest album and kind of wrap
Yeah,
up from there. So what is the last album you feel like belongs in sort of like this is a grindcore album that everybody should listen to?
I'm gonna go. Oh, all right, I'm gonna throw two.
Okay.
Rotten Sound, Cursed
Good one.
is just super pissed off, and then another one. I don't know if you know this band, but I just knowing from what you like from your reviews and stuff, Gridlink.
Oh yeah.
Gehenna is like it's the guitarist. I don't know if it's the same vocalist. I think it's a different guy, but I know the guitarist from Discordance Axis. That's the band he made after, and it's like if there was ever such a thing as like progressive grindcore and like actually having proggy elements. I mean, that's this record right here.
That's cool. Well, and that would be another thing that would lead me to tell you too to check out Beaten to Death, because there are like weird proggy elements in that too. So
hell yeah,
good
I'm
choice.
definitely gonna check that out.
Awesome. My last one I want to include, and this would probably be another one where people would say this isn't really grindcore. I always they're hard to nail down. I call them kind of math grind, but I don't know if you've been keeping up with Fawn Limbs.
Yeah, they're a cool band, man.
Yeah, dude, Fawn Limbs, fucking tight. That album, and they've just been dropping shit. Like they put out like something every year, basically the last 3 years, sometimes twice in the same year. But yeah, Sleeper Vessels, dude, like so amazing and just crazy technical ridiculousness, which should be no surprise because they got a member of Artificial Brain in there, and then the drummer is from Commit Suicide, and he was also in Psyopus for a time.
I played with them before.
Oh really?
Yeah, Psyopus. Yeah, my old band Shot Down Sun. We played with them at like a VFW hall.
Who was their drummer at the time?
Oh, I have no idea, dude.
Okay, I wonder if it was him, because that would be funny. That would be a funny coincidence.
It was like us, and it was Psyopus and the Red Chord in a VFW hall.
Oh, dude, that's awesome. The Red Chord? Fuck yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that was,
the tiny little shit.
Yeah, no, and back in like the early, like around like 2005, 2006, when a lot of those bands were kind of coming up. I mean, I've played some pretty sweet shows, and like they were all in like church basements, VFW halls, and I mean, I played with Whitechapel before they got signed to Metal Blade. It was just in a VFW hall, and it's like, and then all of a sudden, like we played with them, and it was like 2 months later, they were just like,
boom. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, like so many of those bands that are huge now, and it's like, it's just cool to think back. I'm like, man, played with them in a fucking dingy ass hall or church, but every band's got to start somewhere. So
yeah, it's fun when that happens. It's also been fun, like from where I sit, to see a band go from just the one band member sheepishly kind of like being like, hey, I have an album, man, here's my Bandcamp link, to like 3 years later they've got like a PR and they're on a big label now, and it's like, oh, that's neat to like see them go from this person that I just meek little person that I had this passing interaction with to now they're like big time. And yeah, that's really neat. Well, you've got this new album now, though. So, Formless Death. And as of the time this episode drops, I don't think it'll be out yet, but will probably be coming out soon.
March 26th.
Okay, you've got the date nailed down. So
I decided on a date, yes.
Yes, so I think this episode will be dropping about a week or two before that. It'll be within the same month, so this will give a nice little preview. I really enjoyed this thing. I think my personal favorite tracks are Feral Jaws, Selfish Wounds, and Gnawing Loss. But what do you want people to know about Formless Death?
I mean, it's just a kind of a continuation for the band. I feel like I kind of took everything that I learned and did on No Lives Matter and just tried to step it up. I mean, I just wanted this album to be loud, heavy, abrasive. Studio-wise, I did something I'd never done before. We double tracked all the guitars.
Okay.
I had to play everything 4 times, but it just really, really just beefs everything up. And actually, this is the first grind record that actually has some collaboration on it. Because everything else I've written 100%. And, I've had some, obviously the guest vocalist on Pussy Jams, and I had a buddy of mine rip some solos on it. But, actually it's funny, 2 of your favorite jams, so Feral Jaws and Gnawing Lost were both, written by my live guitarist, Cam.
Oh, cool. Well, good for him. He did a good job.
And then, the other guitarist, Mike, he had actually written a song. I actually had way more material for this album, and I just ran out of time, unfortunately. So
I think better to keep it focused, though, is always my take. Like, I'd rather have like a nice focused album with just, a solid amount of tracks. And to me, honestly, especially as a reviewer, like, I value the like 35 minute album, or sometimes even if it's like a 15-minute thing, that's like my favorite thing, because I'm like, sweet, I can like re-listen to this a bunch of times and really get into it and not feel like I have to like sacrifice a ton of like other stuff I need to do to really zero in on it. So I think it works.
Yeah, that's one thing I definitely focused on a lot more with this album. I mean, at least when I listen to it, I feel like it goes by really quickly. It's only a 26-minute long album, and aside from the closer track, which is like a 5-minute long song, instrumental track, most of the other songs, I mean, I got a 10-second song on there.
Yeah, but which I also like. Open Mouths, Endless Teeth, that's another one that I enjoy.
But aside from that, most songs don't run over like a minute 30, if that. And I try to just keep it like, I try to just really focus on hooky riffs and, stuff that's just going to be energetic, and just keep it to the point. Don't try to fluff too many things up, and just kind of boom, 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 go for it.
Yeah, well, I think you got it with that. I also like Bottomless Feeder, 126040.
Yeah, that song. That song is actually, funny enough, it's like 4 years old at this point. Initially, we were going to do an EP where I wrote a song, like the guitarist wrote a song, and then my other guitarist wrote a song. It was going to be like, kind of a 3-song EP of like, different writing styles, essentially. And we just never could get it together. But, that song 126040, we've been playing that song live for like years now. And I almost put it on No Lives Matter. That song was written when I recorded that album, but I was like, no, I'm holding off. It's for the EP. So I didn't do it. And then now it was time for this. I'm like, you know what? It's going on this record.
What are the numbers in reference to?
So it actually, I'm a big like true crime guy.
Oh, me too.
There was this. I don't remember all the details, but basically there was this unsolved murder. It might have been in Australia or in England. I can't remember the exact location, but basically they found this girl got murdered. Nobody knew who did it, but for a while, I guess like this guy would like call and like harass the family and things like that.
Oh, I think I heard about this.
And I want to say on one of the calls, he just said like 126040 and hung up, and nobody knows like what those numbers mean, what they're a reference to.
That's so weird.
Yeah, and so I just remember reading that story, and I was like, ooh, that's kind of creepy. So I just, I mean the numbers in the title honestly really don't even have much to do with the lyrical content at all. I named the song before I had.
That's funny.
Lyrics for it. So I just thought it was one of those like cool titles where then people could ask you like, hey, what does that mean? And then it's so
no, it's a good story. I was also curious. So I saw the track name Like Rats, and of course I immediately thought of Godflesh, because that's like a classic song name from Street Cleaner. I don't know if you even knew that, but that was like the first thing.
I know them. Obviously, I'm not like super versed in their material, but that song actually is a reference to this experiment I had heard about, where this scientist basically took a bunch of rats and gave them a utopia. Basically, like They had all the food they could ever want, all the water they could ever want, all the females they could ever want to sleep with. Like they could literally just eat, sleep, fuck all day long. They didn't have to want for anything. They didn't have to, everything was given to them. And what ended up happening in the experiment is that the rats essentially, over time, just literally gave up because there was no point to their existence anymore.
Yeah.
And they got bored. And then eventually the males stopped sleeping with the females because they were just like, what's the fucking point? They got bored of that. And then eventually the whole colony just died because the rats lost their purpose. And I just thought that was a interesting kind of...
It's true.
But I can see that happening in society now, and really, I've experienced it myself.
That's so true. Like, we have so much kind of served up to us. Like, is it too much at times? Like, you kind of need those struggles to sort of define you. So. Yeah, I mean, that is an interesting point. It also reminds me of that line in The Matrix about how, originally The Matrix was designed, basically that same idea is supposed to be like a utopia for the humans, and everyone rejected it, and they lost entire crops of humans because they couldn't, accept that programming. It's just
it's interesting, man. But yeah, essentially, this album is, most of the tracks are dealing with the death of something, and, I kind of had a weird, over the course of the past year and a half. I've gotten better, but I was dealing with some weird panic attacks, and I was kind of having a lot of anxiety over just death itself, and because I never really thought about it much before. But I mean, I have a young son, and it just kind of hits you one day like a train, where it's just fuck, I'm not going to exist, one day, and
yeah. It is a weird thought.
So, I mean, definitely got a lot better now. But I don't know, this was kind of my therapeutic way of processing a lot of those. And so, most of the songs in some regard or another is dealing with death, whether that's death of actual self or, death of yourself or, death of relationships or things falling apart or, what have you. But
yeah.
Each song has to deal with the death of something.
That's really cool, though. I love when, artists put themselves into the music, and also when it's not preachy too, because some artists, it's so overt that it becomes kind of all right, now you're shoving your ideas down my throat. Whereas I prefer when the artist still puts their whole self into it and how they feel about something, but it's done in such a way that you can still interpret it however you want and take the music in kind of your own way too. So and it's funny to say that about a grindcore record, but it's there's enough openness here. At no point was I sitting here being oh, this is what this is about. It was more so just how each song was hitting me. And so I want people to check it out for sure. And
hell yeah.
Yeah. And dude, I agree. I could definitely, you're somebody I could just sit and talk with for the next several hours, but I do have some other stuff, unfortunately, I need to get to.
I know how it goes.
Yeah. So. But yeah, I know you do. Is there anything you absolutely want to make sure people know before we wrap up here?
I mean, by the time you're listening to this, I'm sure it's going to be really close to the record coming out, but just check out our Bandcamp. We got plenty of merch up there. There's going to be, at the end of February, putting up pre-orders, CDs, super limited vinyl. I'm only doing an initial run of 25 because I learned my lesson last time. And
Fair enough.
I pressed too many records and they're all sitting in my closet. So I wanted to do a more limited run this time. So, initial run, only 50 CDs, 25 vinyl, and once that sells out, we'll kind of see where it's going to go from there. But so I mean, if you want to get in on that, check out our Bandcamp.
Maybe you can set up some package deals with the vinyls that are sitting around.
Yeah, I might have to. I mean, and unfortunately, just more or less a problem with I don't get to play a lot of shows with this band. I have a live band, but everyone in the band, this is Grind is their side band. So, it's just hard to match people's schedules up, and then obviously
Yeah,
with
man.
COVID, like no one's playing shows, so we haven't played
I
a
hear
show
that.
in 2 years. So
I
I'm
mean,
hoping to.
I can imagine like doing that regularly is tough because even that's part of the reason why I've shifted more to the solo YouTube content as opposed to doing weekly interviews like I was, because it's hard enough just to get like one or two band members to coordinate a time with me to sit down and do an interview, much less like meet every single week or whatever to
Oh yeah,
practice with four members or whatever. Like it's hard. It's hard to do.
yeah, it is, and everyone, like my drummer, he works overnight shift, and then like this guy works in the afternoons,
Yep.
like that, and well, actually, you know some of the other bands, so Cam, my guitarist, and Brendan, my bass player, they're in Begotten Nephilim.
Oh, nice. Hell
Yep.
yeah, dude.
So
Love that
yep. And then if you haven't, you should check them out. But my drummer Joe, his main band is a band called Iron Gag, and they're kind of like a convergey, kind of noisy band. But also,
nice.
I think you would also really dig it. He has a bedroom black metal project that's signed to Nottermock Productions called Bjorn's Hall, and they're like super folky Lord of the Rings inspired black metal. I have both of their records on my shelf there because obviously he's my boy. I gotta support him.
Yeah.
But I mean they're really freaking good. But they've done. It's just funny because he used to work with me when I worked back at Kohl's. And I remember him showing me demos like, yeah, me and my buddy, like we just got these, bedroom black metal songs. And then like a week later, that label picked them up, and then
that's awesome.
They've been, getting traction in the black metal scene. So
it is so cool how that can happen now. Like it's just like random people like in their basement just making music and like get picked up and do that stuff. But that all sounds right up my alley because I do love really folky black metal. I love Lord of the Rings since like my dad used to read me the books since I was like probably 4 years old or something. We were just rewatching one of the movies too. Like they hold up so well since they actually used like really good visual effects instead of all CGI and everything. And then I love Converge. I mean, I just put up that video like bands like Converge, and I have by the time this comes out, I think my Converge tier list will be up too. So anything that's remotely Converge adjacent, like you got me.
Yeah.
So
I want to say so yeah, that band Iron Gag, they did a split, and I want to say the band that they did a split with you've covered before. They're called Malavik.
Oh yeah. That sounds very familiar. Yeah, there's so many bands though.
I know.
But that sounds really familiar.
It's crazy.
Well, cool, man. Like this has been fun. We'll have to do it again sometime.
I'm always down. I know, but it's cool to finally sit down and talk with you. I mean, I know it's kind of funny because I know we've been friends on Facebook, and
we've been talking for a couple years now, but this is our first time like interacting vocally.
But it's just funny because I'm subscribed to your channel, and so like I watch your videos when they pop up. So like I hear your voice like almost every day, and it's like it's just funny because like I feel like I know you, but yeah, we haven't actually got to sit down and have a chat yet. So
that's fun. I hadn't thought of that too, because like I have that relationship with certain YouTubers too. Like again, Red Letter Media, like I almost feel like I know them, and you develop, what do they call that? Like a parasocial relationship.
Oh yeah.
These people you don't actually know, but it's nice that like sometimes I actually get to sit down with people and then like actually talk to them.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, it's
like
cool, man. And I know in one of you did a live chat, whatever, and then
oh yeah, that's right.
And you're like, we're like quasi friends. I'm like, okay, well at least I'm not feeling like a creep, and I'm like,
it's not
kind of on the same
one-sided
wavelength, because I was like, like I said, I like to support cool dudes. So like I always make sure to watch your videos. Just
yeah.
Even if it's a band I don't care about, I'll still let it play through because I know that counts towards you.
Thank you, man.
Your
I
numbers,
really do appreciate that. That means something. And no, man, and I appreciate you too, because you were, you reached out before the YouTube channel was even a thing. Like when we first started interacting, it was just the website, and I had just moved. I actually remember speaking of albums that kind of stick with me in my memory a little bit. it's funny because we were just moving to Oregon when we were interacting, and the last leg when we were driving through the dark the last few blocks to get to our house, I was listening to Pussy Jams. The rest of the family was all passed out in the car, and I was just like listening to the album and coming up in my head within my head like what I was gonna write for the review. And I hadn't really thought about that in a little while, but yeah, like I still remember that moment, so that means something.
There we go.
All right, man. Well,
Awesome.
I'm sure we both have to get back to our kids and the dad thing and the husband thing and all that stuff.
It's just about to be bedtime, so
yep.
Yeah, man. I'd love to chat again soon sometime, and
yeah, dude.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Anytime. Where's the best place for people to like follow Grind of the Dead to? Like, where do you update the most?
Yeah, I mean, we got all the usual stuff, but I use Instagram more because Facebook is absolutely fucking useless.
Yeah, dude. Facebook is just like pointless at this point.
It's ridiculous. I mean, we have like almost 900 likes, and I'll make a post, and it's like you reached 4 people. It's like,
yeah,
what's the point?
It's garbage. So, like it was already bad, and now it's just like. I even polled people the other day. I'm like, do you even see my posts? Because if you don't, I'm just going to stop posting here and I'm just going to focus my time somewhere else because it's just stupid.
Yeah, so I mean, Instagram is like the main place I post.
Yeah,
and then
Instagram's decent.
And we actually get some reach on there. Obviously, I just had to set up a new YouTube channel because Google won't let me log into my old banned email. So unfortunately, I don't have access to the original YouTube channel.
That sucks.
It's not much on there yet, but I'm working on a music video, so that should be up in a couple weeks. And
I look forward.
And then and then obviously our Bandcamp, and I always send little messages to the followers, just updating them on various things. So if you get a Bandcamp account, shoot us a follow on there. Follow us on Instagram, it's just at Grind of the Dead, and hopefully you dig the new record.
All right, man. Well, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Have a good night.
Yep, you too. And that'll do it for another episode of Trench Talk. Always a good time to just talk with people, especially ones that I've been interacting with for years, like I said, and this is our first time actually like having a real chat. So hope it was as much a treat for you as it was for me, even though we definitely went off topic. But that is, if you're a regular listener, like that's just how these episodes go. Like we can't stick to a thing. These episodes have a mind of their own. But in any case, thank you so much for listening. Again, please do subscribe if you're new. You can listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, Castbox, and then please do subscribe to the YouTube channel too for more daily content. You can also join our Discord to chat with me and support on Patreon. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I'll see you in the trenches.